I'm Alex Petersen, joining you from UC Merced in sunny California. Those are the Sierra Nevadas in the background. And today I'm going to be sharing our recent work developing a framework for measuring and evaluating the alignment between social and conceptual dimensions of research and how it conditions the impact of convergence science. First, a big thank you to the organizers for this opportunity to share an overview of this work. Please consult these 2 articles produced in collaboration with Arroyave I Pavlidis and others for more details. Let's start with some background on convergence science. Convergence is defined according to its originators as the coming together of insights and approaches from originally distinct fields to provide creative solutions to the most difficult problems facing us as a society and thinking beyond usual paradigms, informed by many perspectives instead of a few. As such, it is a holistic research model that consists of transdisciplinary organizational principles designed for prosecuting mission-oriented agendas that are aimed at addressing boundary-spanning grand challenges. In addition to the Manhattan Project and the Human Genome Project, more contemporary examples of mission-oriented agenda setting are provided by the NSF Convergence Accelerator Program, which for several years has defined specific boundary-spanning problem domains. Against this backdrop, today I will showcase a framework for measuring and evaluating convergence science at the publication level. According to the schematic, we first measure convergence by decomposing research publications according to 2 complementary dimensions: the social component, which we infer by classifying the disciplinary affiliations of the co-authors, and the conceptual components, which are based upon article-level keywords. We then infer whether these components belong to originally distinct domains, and thereby distinguish between varying degrees of boundary-spanning research. We can also then assess the prevalence and role of social conceptual alignment in research outcomes. The measurement of a disciplinary distance is central to the definition of convergence as the coming together of insights and approaches from originally distinct fields. To this end, we use hierarchical ontologies to define a distance between any 2 locations in the relational tree, such that disciplines or concepts represented by the ontology can be described as either neighboring or distant. Shown are samples from the 2 existing ontologies leveraged in our approach: the classification of instructional programs ontology, used to classify scholars' departmental affiliations, and the medical subject heading keyword ontology, used to classify biomedical life and environmental science concepts. Each is comprised of thousands of well-defined entities that respectively capture the social and conceptual dimensions of research. In the case of the mesh keyword ontology, there are roughly 30,000 distinct keywords of varying specificity that span 16 broad conceptual subject areas, ranging from traditional biomedical areas of anatomy, organisms, and diseases, to more convergent areas of technology, information science, and healthcare. Each mesh term comes with a descriptor page that provides detailed context and specifies a location and relationship with other mesh terms in the ontology. Shown here is a notorious example of a new term added to the 2020 edition of MESH. Hence, in the case of the conceptual dimension, we map each publication's mesh terms onto a distinct branch of the mesh network, which allows us to consistently tabulate cross-domain mesh combinations. Similarly, in the case of the social dimension, we manually classified roughly 9,000 scholars according to their primary departmental affiliation, using the classification of instructional programs, or SIP ontology, that is developed and maintained by the U.S. National Center for Educational Statistics. In our first study, we focused on the conceptual space by analyzing 21 million biomedical research articles to identify which conceptual advancements have played the largest role in biomedical convergence. By tracking all the mesh combinations across 10 originally distinct conceptual domains, indicated here by colors, we can identify key conceptual configurations that define biomedical convergence hotbeds. To provide a general idea, each network here shows the top 10 mesh that appeared in technology and informatics research, respectively, on the top and bottom rows, across 3 decades. In the case of the technology domain, advances in imaging capabilities associated with the gold domain of techniques and equipment together elucidated structures and their reaction spaces across multiple size scales, from organisms to cells to chemicals and drugs, as denoted by red. In the case of informatics, advances in high-throughput recording, visualizing and analysis of high-dimensional data are increasingly relevant to healthcare, as represented by pink nodes. In general, our study documents how the biomedical sciences transitions from a more descriptive science in its formative years, when the focus was on cataloging fundamental biological structures, to the 1980s and onwards, when structure-function-oriented questions defining the mechanics of the biological world came into focus. To appreciate the transformative role of techno-informatic convergence, shown here are the frequencies of publications featuring mesh from the J and L branches over time. The high degree of coupling between J and L reflects how the codifiable concept spaces encountered in biomedicine fulfill the hallmark of techno-informatic convergence, which is automation at scale. Indeed, since the completion of the Human Genome Project in the early 2000s, roughly 8% of all biomedical research now includes mesh terms from both the J and the L mesh branches, representing a 291% increase from 1980 levels. This transformation highlights the importance of establishing a common language to span disciplinary boundaries, namely the ACTG of genetics and the 0 and 1 bits, which support the high-functioning marriage between biology and informatics. Given the importance of strategically assembling teams that optimally span the concept space of a target problem, we extended our analysis to classify the social dimension of research teams in an analysis of roughly 9,000 scholars that define the field of human brain sciences. Our second research questions thus seek to identify to what degree does alignment between social and conceptual dimensions affect research outcomes. To analyze both dimensions simultaneously, we employed the following metrics. First, we identified the article's conceptual composition by tabulating the mesh terms into subject areas, represented by the SA vector shown for two example publications. The first is monotopic, in that all concepts belong to the SA1, and hence the vector with elements 3, 0, 0, 0. The second instance features a cross-topic paper featuring essays 1, 2, and 4. Second, we identified the article's disciplinary composition, represented by the CIP vector, by tabulating the department affiliations of the co-authors. Our example shows a monodisciplinary team in one instance, along with a cross-disciplinary team in the other. Based upon these count vectors, we then calculate a Blau-like diversity index that accounts for the concentration and categorical diversity of the counts across the different domains. Hence, the monodomain vector maps onto the minimum value of 0, whereas the cross-domain vectors map onto larger values that are upper bounded by unity. Finally, we quantify team problem alignment by way of the cosine similarity metric, which is the inner product between the SA and CIP vectors. Shown at the bottom are two example alignments. The first is polymathic configuration, in which the conceptual space extends beyond the core expertise of the team. This publication achieves a moderate alignment score of 0.58. The second example represents a fully convergent configuration, in which both the conceptual and the social domains span distinct boundaries, and moreover, since each concept that the publication addresses is matched by a scholar with expertise in that subject area, then this publication achieves a relatively high alignment score of 0.87. Shown here is the average social conceptual alignment calculated annually across the roughly 650,000 publications in our human brain science dataset. The persistent decline captures how teams in this problem domain are increasingly polymathic, that is, extending into conceptual domains beyond their core domains of expertise, which may represent a general trend in modern science away from specialists towards generalists who are able to extend their skill base by way of expansive learning. One reason we analyze the convergence nexus of human brain science, which aims to understand the structure-function problem in the human brain and how it manifests in cognition, was the simultaneous launching in 2013 of human brain projects in the US, European Union, and in China, each representing independent multi-billion-dollar government-sponsored missions. Interestingly, we note a sudden team problem alignment increase in the 2 years prior to the launch of various international projects, followed by a participants' decline. The coincidence of this burst with the Human Brain Project launch is a hallmark of a convergence shortcut, whereby scholars integrate diverse concepts without achieving commensurate team diversity, likely as a strategy for rapidly securing financial support from these one-off flagship funding programs. We implemented a hierarchical regression model employing researcher fixed effects to quantify the impact of conceptual convergence and team problem alignment. Our results indicate that maximally convergent research features 11% citation boost relative to otherwise similar monodisciplinary research, and furthermore, we identify a modest 3% boost for research teams that are fully aligned with the problem domain. Altogether, we developed and applied a convergence science framework for understanding the structure and function relationship between social and conceptual dimensions of research. In particular, this approach can provide guidance on how to design teams, the keys, that are best equipped to address or unlock specific grand challenges. In effect, this means that the strategic assembly of teams should follow form follows function design principles such that the function of the team should be tailored to the focal subject area of the target problem. Thank you for your attention, and please consult our other work on convergence science for more details on this measurement framework and its applications.